Wonderful.
Jerusalem, if I forget you, fire not gonna come from my tongue. Jerusalem, if I forget you, let my right hand forget what it's supposed to do. In the ancient days, we'll return with no delay, picking up the bounty and the spoils on our way. We've been traveling from state to state, and they don't understand what they say. 3,000 years with no place to be, and they want me to give up my milk and honey. Don't you see? It's not about the land or the sea, not the country, but the dwelling of His Majesty. Jerusalem, if I forget you, fire not gonna come from my tongue. Jerusalem, if I forget you, let my right hand forget what it's supposed to do. Rebuild the temple and the crown of glory. Years gone by, about 60. Burn in the oven in the century. And the gas tried to choke, but it couldn't choke me. I'll not lie down, I will not fall asleep. Yes, they come overseas and they're trying to be free. Erase the demons about our memory. Change your name and your identity. Afraid of the truth in our dark history. Why is everybody always chasing we? Cut off the roots of our family tree, don't you know? That's not the way to be. Jerusalem, if I forget you, fire not gonna come from my tongue. Jerusalem, if I forget you, let my right hand forget what it's supposed to do. Jerusalem, if I forget you, fire not gonna come from my tongue. Jerusalem, if I forget you, let my right hand forget what it's supposed to do. Jerusalem, if I forget you, fire not gonna come from my tongue. Jerusalem, if I forget you, let my right hand forget what it's supposed to do. Jerusalem, if I forget you, fire not gonna come from my tongue. Jerusalem, if I forget you, let my right hand forget what it's supposed to do. Thank you.
Thank you,
Hi, everyone.
Emma.
That was Emma Spike-Neaman, and she's a sophomore theater major on the ritual board of USC Hillel.
Thank you, Emma, and
Thank you.
it's incredible to be together with such. It's a treasure, really, to be together with such a group of students, parents, alumni, and friends of our USC family, and
Absolutely.
to join together for this evening of memory. I'm Dave Cohn. I'm the director of USC Hillel. I want to first of all, from the depth of my heart, thank Shelly, Emma, and Lauren, our student leaders who are facilitating this evening, and to our shlicha, our Israel fellow, Gal Aslan, from Hillel, who've worked very hard to put this together, and a special acknowledgement to the Holocaust Museum Los Angeles, and Julia Davis from the museum is here tonight as well. Who's a great friend of ours, who've all had a hand in bringing this together. Tonight we're partaking in this new ritual of Zikaron BaSalon, of memories in the living room, which is a new iteration, a new way to participate in memory, and at the same time we are conscious in a way that is all too painful and all too present, that we're not trafficking in memory alone, that we have seen in recent days in the United States, we've seen in recent years around the world, that we're not dealing only with history, we are dealing with painful experience that transits to the present day, and that the exercise of remembering the past becomes all the more potent, all the more crucial in a world where we have seen that the hatred that we're remembering in different forms, in different venues, and in a different modality at times, it remains alive. And our cognizance of that is a huge part of what we think will help us survive and thrive into the future as a people. So it's a powerful moment to come together. And I want not only to dwell in the memory and in the difficulty of this, but to think about how poignant it can be to look backwards and also to look forwards. And we have this I think, beautiful coincidence this year of International Holocaust Remembrance Day coinciding with Tu B'Shvat, with our annual New Year for trees and for the earth and all of the rebirth that we consider on this day, we're not only remembering, we're not only looking back on difficult things, but we're also building something new and building something aspirational. And I couldn't think of a better manifestation of what Hillel is about than seeing this come together in this way with passionate student leaders driven to facilitate an experience, to create space with mentorship and resources and partners, and with the deepest of gratitude to everyone involved in this evening's gathering. I'll pass it back to Shelly, who will introduce Louise, with whom we are so honored to share the evening. Shelly?
Hi, thank you everyone for joining us for this program today. My name is Shelly Raiter. I'm a first-year student studying psychology and legal studies, and I'm the director of Mishlanu, which is Hillel's club for Israeli students at USC. It's a pleasure to be with all of you here tonight. Before we begin, I want to share a few words about our partner for this evening's event, which is the Holocaust Museum LA. The Holocaust Museum LA is the first Holocaust survivor-founded Holocaust museum in the United States, and it was founded in 1961 by a group of survivors who worked together to create a memorial for their loved ones who perished in the Holocaust. The survivors who established the museum did so with a mission to commemorate, educate, and inspire future generations. And although we weren't able to meet in person, the museum continues to fulfill their mission by bringing virtual programs to students and communities across Los Angeles. This evening, we have the honor and privilege of hearing from Louise Lerner, who was born in Paris, France in 1938. After Louise shares her story, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. And without further ado, I want to pass it off to Louise, who will share her story with all of us today.
Thank you. Okay, as I say, my name is Louise Lerner. I was born in Paris in 1938, 2 years before the start of the war. My parents came to France from Poland, Warsaw. They left a lot of their family there in Warsaw, and I must say, I never got the opportunity to meet them, to know them. Here I have a photo. Let's see. Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Okay, that's me. My parents. I had a brother who was 8 years older than me. So this photo is taken just before the war started. As I say, my parents came to Paris, obviously in the late 1920s, got married. As I say, I had a brother who was 8 years older than me. When the war started, my father volunteered into the French army. And when the whole army capitulated, he was prisoner of war for 5 years in Germany, but he was wearing the French uniform. He was a French soldier, and therefore he was spared from all the atrocities that the Nazis came. But when at the same time in 1940, when my father went to the army, my mother left our apartment in Paris and escaped south. Part of the south of France became independent, was independent under the government of the Maréchal Pétain, who he was, although he was allied with, he eventually allied with the Nazis. But for a little time, that was the south of France under the government of Vichy was a little independent. However, that didn't last. And what I remember is really what happened in 1943 when I was 5 years old. I remind you that when the war started, I was 2 years old, and of course, I don't remember nothing of that. So what in 1943, as I said, the government of Vichy was out, and all France was under the government, under the dominion of the Nazis. That day in 1943, my mother must have been told that the Nazis were coming. As I said, the Nazis were finding all the Jews in France, taking them to Germany, sorry, I am a bit nervous and I forget words anyhow. So I remember we were living in a compound, low level compound, and there were some units on the ground floor. There was a staircase and 2 units on the upper floor. Each unit was just 2 rooms, lodging. And so we were, that evening that I remember, we were sitting in the dark, in silence, waiting for the Nazis to come and pick us up. And the Nazis came, checked all the units on the ground floor, and maybe because we were sitting in the dark and in silence, they thought that maybe it was empty and they didn't come. So we were saved. After that, my mother contacted the Maquis, the French resistance, and my next memory was to be on a train going towards the border between France and Switzerland. Switzerland at that time was neutral, and a lot of refugees had already found refuge in Switzerland. Anyhow, so we are on the train, we arrive at the station, en masse, and we come out of the train, and you know, usually there is a guard at the entrance. Well, the guard was not there, luckily. Somebody from the French on the ground was waiting for us and took us to his house. And the evening, then we went out walking towards the border between France and Switzerland. Open field with bordering a forest. And so we arrive at the border, there is a barbed wire, and the guard that came with us had to disappear because the Swiss had their laws say that we had to come alone, not with any help. Anyhow, so we are there at the barbed wire, putting the little packets that we had on the other side when a guard come and stopped at halt. It was a Swiss German. Now in Switzerland was divided into cantons, like provinces. And some cantons, they spoke French. In other cantons, they spoke German. And in one canton, they spoke Italian. Anyhow, so it was a Swiss German soldier guard that found us. And my mother told me that she had to really speak and plead with him and so on to allow us in. And again, at that time, Switzerland had a law saying that they will only accept refugees, families with children under 6. Well, I was 5. So finally, a supervisor came, and my mother convinced them that to let us in. So he allowed us in, and we marched towards the guard. My next memory was to be in a hospital bed. I must have caught one of those contagious sickness that children have. And so I was in my bed, in the bed, and in front of me, partition with glass on top, and I saw my mother coming to say goodbye to me. Next thing, I must have got better. I am again on a train with somebody leading me, and I arrived to Locarno. Locarno is a city in the Italian part of Switzerland. And there a wonderful couple, had accepted to take me in. Of course, it was the Red Cross who was organizing this. I was a refugee, and it was the Red Cross who were organizing that. So as I say, I was placed with this couple, Ernesto and Bice Bernasconi, wonderful people. Of course, I had to learn how to speak Italian, which I guess I must have learned easy. And they became, for me, like my mother and my father. Remember, my father had left for war when I was 2 years old. I did not remember my father. My mother, of course, I remember her, but we were separated. And so I lived with the Bernasconi. When I became 6 years old, I started going to school in Locarno. Everybody was always very friendly, very helpful. In there, I met, of course, the parents of the Bernasconis. So, and I had the uncle and nephew and cousins and grandparents for the first and only time in my life. And so it was for me a happy time, I must say. In 1945, after 2 years, the war ended. My father was freed from prisoner of war and came back to Paris. But of course, they had an apartment, and so other people had been living there. They had to start everything from scratch. I must say, my father was just a tailor, and my mother would do the handwork, working with him. We're humble. So they asked the Bernasconi to keep me for a longer time, and which of course they agreed on. And so I stayed there 2 more years in Locarno, but the time had to come that I had to leave. And it was a very painful separation, a very painful leaving for them and for me. And so I came to Paris. And remember, I mean, I really didn't really know my parents. We had to get acquainted again. And I had to learn how to speak French again. And they put me to school. And again, it was kind of difficult. I remember once I was in class and we had to make an analysis, grammar, and I didn't know. And I tried to copy from my neighbor. And of course, the teacher caught me, took me to the headmistress. But thank God the headmistress understood that my problem and was very understanding and helpful. And so that was my time going to school again. And my parents put me into a Jewish, and that's where really I learned to be Jewish. Because while I was in Switzerland with the Bernasconi, of course, they were Roman Catholic. And I used to go to Mass every Sunday morning, but they never tried to convert me. They knew that my real parents were alive and they would do it. which I really appreciate and understand very deeply. Anyhow, so I am in Paris. I am going to school, and on Sundays I go to my Jewish organization, and as I say, I learn what it is to be Jewish. But my parents were not practicing Jews. As a matter, my father was more inclined towards socialist ideas and ideals. Anyhow, being at school under the French system, when you reach the 11 years old, you have to choose whether to continue elementary school until you are 14 years old or go to secondary school. And at that point, of course, you have to sit an entrance examination to go to secondary school, as it's called a lycée in France. And I chose that. I sat the exam and I passed. And so I started going to secondary school in France. And I was very happy. I made friends. I was fine. And again, I continued to go on weekends to my Jewish organization. However, I must say, in France at that time, in the international level, there was a lot of tension between the Soviet Union and the United States. And France was in the middle, and my father was afraid that there might be a third world war with France at the battlefield. And so, unknown to me, my mother had a sister in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Obviously, she must have been there well before the war. And so they were in contact with her. They made all the paperwork to migrate to Argentina. And at the last moment, they told me that we were leaving. I didn't want to, but of course I had no, there was nothing I could do. And so I found myself on my way to Argentina. It was, at that time we went by boat. It was a trip that took about 2 weeks. And what I remember of that trip is that every evening I learned how to dance in ball dancing. And of course, and so we arrived in Buenos Aires, and we stayed first, as I say, with my aunt and uncle until my parents found an apartment, a house, and we moved. And of course, again, I had to learn how to speak Spanish. Luckily, I have been very lucky to always find help when I needed. And I learned a friend of my parents taught me to speak Spanish, and I had to sit an exam and to start start school in Buenos Aires. So I passed the exam and I was registered to start secondary school in Buenos Aires. So I did that. So I went to school, and again I joined a Jewish Zionist organization, for young called Shomer HaTzair. And so I was going to school during weekdays, and weekends I would go to my Jewish organization. And so the years passed, and so on. It was okay. I finished secondary school. I sat an examination to university, and I chose to learn architecture. The good thing why I was able to do it is because in Argentina, university is the state and is free. I didn't have to pay tuition. I don't think that I would have been able to do so if that would have been the case. But as I say, the university is free. And I started going to university in Buenos Aires and continue to go to my youth Jewish organization on weekends. So it was okay. But the study of architecture, it was 6 years in Buenos Aires. When I read it, but I don't know if my third year or so, but there was still a lot of, I felt a lot of anti-Semitism in Buenos Aires, and especially there was a time where a Nazi general, Adolf Eichmann, he was responsible for the extermination camps in Germany. He survived the war and escaped and managed to enter Argentina. Israel knew about it. The Mossad came to Argentina, found Eichmann, and took him out, managed to take him out, took him to Jerusalem, where he was judged and condemned to die. At that time, of course, a lot of anti-Semitism and a lot of movement and a lot of, it was a big scandal in Argentina. And while I was studying architecture, and I felt that I may not have been able to really work in my profession being Jewish. And so again, I had an uncle in Israel, in Tel Aviv. That uncle was the only surviving brother of my father. And of course, my father was in touch with him. And through him, I decided to migrate to Israel. And so I have been so many years in a Jewish Zionist organization, and it was an obvious choice. And so I made all the paperwork to migrate to Israel, and I found my way there. I arrived in Israel. I met my uncle and aunt and a cousin, a younger cousin, Avi, with whom I am still in touch. And anyhow, so I arrived in Israel. I registered at the university in the Faculty of Architecture to complete my studies, because I only had finished 4 years in Buenos Aires. So there was 2 more years for me to study in order to complete my studies and graduate. And so I registered at the Technion, which is the Technological Institute of Israel. And I also had to go to learn to speak Hebrew, because of course the classes are taught in Hebrew. So luckily in Israel they have courses, very intensive courses, 4 months to learn how to speak, which of course I went and I did, and I managed to pass. And so I found my way to Haifa, where the faculty was. Being there, I lived on campus, and of course in Israel at that time still, and it's still now, life is pretty hard. The Israeli students have to, when they finish secondary school, they have to do military service before being able to go to university. So that all the Israeli students would come to class really with a suitcase at the door, come to the class and the class finish, they go back quickly to work, to their home, to whatever. And so life on campus was really with a lot of, mostly with the foreign students that were also there studying in Israel. And at that time, the Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs, Golda Meir, had organized a parallel course of engineering for students from developing countries. And so there was the course was with students that came from Guyana, Jamaica, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Laos, and Asian countries. And so I found that while I was studying, the little social life was really among foreign students. And so that's how I got to know a student from Jamaica. We started a relationship. And okay, well, I finished my studies. He was studying engineering 1 more year. And we decided to get married. And I found myself married. And of course, I had to go with him back to Jamaica. He had to go back to Jamaica, and I found myself on my way with him to Jamaica. So I must say, well, it doesn't matter. So I arrived in Jamaica. Of course, in Jamaica they speak English, but I had the basic, thank God this time I had a basic knowledge of English. I registered with the Ministry of Works, Infrastructure and Works in Jamaica, in Kingston, and I was accepted. I registered as a professional at the Institute of Architects in Jamaica. And so I was able to start working in Jamaica. I must say, at the ministry, there was a whole department, architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, draftsmen, and of course, I was the first female architect there, but I never had really any problem being accepted, and I worked in Jamaica in all kinds of big projects, mostly civil projects, offices, nurses' home. I had also a hospital ward for children. Anyhow, this kind of civil works that I did. I worked in Jamaica all this time. My marriage, unfortunately, didn't last, but I stayed on in Jamaica to work. I had a daughter, and she eventually, well, after she eventually, of course, she went to school, primary school, secondary school, and decided to become an interior designer. And there was no such school of interior design in Jamaica. So she found here in Los Angeles, UCLA. She applied, was accepted, and she found her way here to study. She studied 4 years at UCLA and found a husband here. So she got married, and she has now 2 children, big children. My grandson is already 17 years old, and my granddaughter 15. And so I was in Jamaica working. I made, of course, a couple of visits while she was here. But then it came time for me to retire. I didn't have no more work in Jamaica. So I decided to come here and to be with my family. And here I am. I have made this contact with, I've made contacts also with, with the Museum of the Holocaust, where I also gave some talks. And I am very happy to be able to share my memories and my experience to young people, just to let them know what happened in the world. And the whole idea is that not only is good to know what happened, but also to make sure that never again something like that happen again. Because you must say, as I say, I am a Holocaust survivor. 6 million Jews died during the Holocaust for the only reason to be Jew. That was the only reason. There was no other reason, basis on which to exterminate the Jews. And so, thank God I am alive. But as I say, it's important for you, young people, to know what happened and never again let anything like that happen in the world. Not for against Jews or any other group, human group. That's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Louise. I know it probably wasn't very easy for you to tell, but we really appreciate that you came here and told it to us today. We learned so much, and I know that I'm really inspired by what you went on to accomplish throughout your life. So now we're going to go on to the question and answer part of this. So if you don't feel comfortable asking your question out loud, feel free to put it in the chat, or you can private message it to Lauren Milstein, and she will ask it out loud for you. And if you want to ask the question personally, then there's a raise hand feature on Zoom. So just raise your hand, and then Lauren will go through and call people. So we're going to have Emma now sing another song for us while you guys have a chance to put all your questions into the chat, and then we'll start it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. What an honor. We are going to transition with a song called Here Comes the Sun. Here we go. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, I said, it's alright. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, I said, it's alright, little darling. The smiles returning to their faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, I said, it's alright, it's alright. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Emma. That was wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Milstein. I am the VP of Virtual at USC Hillel. I am a junior majoring in communication and minoring in performing arts studies. Louise, I just want to take another moment to thank you again so much for sharing your testimony. As a great-grandchild of Holocaust survivors myself, I understand how important it is for survivors to share their stories. And so now we're going to be beginning the Q&A portion of our session, and I just want to thank everybody for their questions. And we are going to begin with a question from Nicole Waldman, who's a student at USC and is one of our USC Hillel co-presidents that we're so lucky to have. So take it away, Nicole.
Okay.
Hi, my name is
Hi.
Nicole, and I first just wanted to say thank you so much for speaking with us today. It's such an honor to hear your bravery and your story. It's absolutely amazing how much you've gone through. And we are just so grateful on behalf of Hillel to be able to be hosting this event tonight. So I was hoping you might share how living through such a horrific, history-changing period has impacted your perspective on life. And I'm also wondering, sorry, I just got a message. And I'm also wondering if it affects your perspective on this period that we're living through today, especially, and on the current climate, which, you know, for us students has been the craziest thing that we can remember. And so it's such an life-altering time right now. So I'm just curious on your perspective.
You know, it's really, it's difficult. I just lived, each time you have to accept what's happening and going, it's just a feeling of loneliness, you know, that loneliness, but also to be grateful for whatever you find. Somehow I have always found help. Whenever I needed it, I found help. So you go from one phase to another, not knowing what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen in the future. And as I say, so just accepting what's happening and going on, carrying on, you know, there is nothing else to do. But as I say, feeling lonely, but always found help that I needed whenever I needed it. And I'm very grateful for that. And now I'm concerned about what's happening in nowadays, but at the moment I am retired and I am on the side, and so I am only an observer, but I am very concerned. Yes, yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you. Up next, we have a question from Chloe Rad, who's another student at USC, and she's one of the co-presidents of Trojans for Israel.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming to speaking with us on behalf of the entire Jewish and Zionist communities here at USC.
Speak a little bit louder. I cannot hear you well.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Can you hear me better? So I wanted to thank you first for coming and speaking with us today. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the entire Jewish and Zionist community here at USC. And so my question is, as a lover of Israel and as a very proud Zionist, I wanted to know what your most favorite part of Israel is and what you miss most about living there.
Oh, well, listen, I went to Jerusalem, okay? And Jerusalem, of course, has a very special place in our heart and in our thing. I was in Jerusalem before I left Israel in 1966, and the Israeli opened up all Jerusalem in 1967. So I was able to see the whole town from the wall, just looking up the walls of Jerusalem. And I remember seeing a Jordanian soldier there with this on top of the wall. So but it is a special feeling to be in Jerusalem. And I went, of course, to the museum. Oh gosh, how it's called. I don't know. When I am thinking, I forget the name. But of course, the museum in Jerusalem, when you see all the
Yad Vashem. Yad Vashem.
That's right, Yad Vashem. I went to Yad Vashem. It's wonderful. It's really a wonderful museum, and it's really very. It's a special feeling that you feel when you are in Jerusalem. At least that's how I felt. I have also the opportunity to go down to the Dead Sea. That was when I was as a student. We went there and so on, and also the anyhow, unfortunately I was not able to go up to. Gosh, I don't know what. Suddenly, my mind is not working. But anyhow, yes, I went there. I saw Jerusalem. I saw the Dead Sea. I saw the what was the oh gosh, pardon me. But when you are in Israel, it's a special feeling. Somehow I left after 3 years. I never was able to go back, but my feelings are still with Israel. It's a special. It's really a special feeling.
Whatever happened to her brother, Louise's brother?
Oh, my brother. Yes, as I say, he was 8 years older than me, so he had to do his military service in France before coming to Buenos Aires. He got married and had 2 children there. When I left, he was still in Buenos Aires. He is now dead. Unfortunately, I was not there. But you know, one of the things that most I don't know, I just say saddened me. I am sad. Is that we never had the opportunity as a family to sit down and talk, share memory, what happened during the war, how we spent, what happened, and so on. We never had the opportunity to speak, to share memories. And that's something that I feel, especially now, when I talk about what happened, I really feel more deeply that we never had that kind of communication, that kind of sharing. He's dead now. And of course, he's buried in Buenos Aires, and I am here.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Now I'm going to take a question from Joe Raskin, who is a USC alum, and his daughter Hannah is also on our executive board at Hillel. Go ahead.
Yeah. I can't hear. I cannot hear.
Okay, while he works on that, we're going to call on Daphne Fishel, who has her hand up. Daphne, are you ready to ask your question?
Oh, hi, yes. Sorry, my internet. First of all, thank you so much for speaking with us. It's really great to hear your story, and we appreciate it a lot. And my question I was wondering is, why was your mother not able to take care of you when you went to Switzerland?
It was the policy of the Red Cross to separate everybody. That was the Red Cross policy. So I went on one side, my mother went on another side, my brother on another side. That was their policy. So that's how it worked.
Wow.
Or at
Okay.
least that's what they make it work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Very interesting.
Louise, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi. I want to say a couple thank yous to you before I ask my question. One is for when you first began to speak, you showed that picture of your family.
Yes.
And it was beautiful and personal, and I really appreciated it. I also want to make sure that you can view the grid. There's 3 pages of almost 50 people, young and adult, or I should say young adult and older adult Jews here in the United States, and we're all living in the world you survivors gave us.
Yes.
And I really hope you can take a look at the screen that way, because I really, at least I believe the stories you're telling are protecting all of us. And so, one last thank you, and that's giving me one more reason to admire Golda Meir, because she was an absolute visionary.
Absolutely.
But what I wanted to ask more specifically was something similar to the question you were just asked. I was trying to picture you as a 3 to 5-year-old little girl in France who really had not had an education in being Jewish yet. And were you asking, like, why us? Why Jews? What's going on? And if you can remember ever thinking those questions, what were the answers you got? And thank you again.
Yes, no, I really never asked that question. I really never asked that question. I just, I don't know, I just went along with whatever was happening. As I say, it was new to me. I learned it. I went along with it. As I say, my parents were from Poland, but they were not practicing really, although we celebrated, you know, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, but not really in a religious way. And as I said, for me, it was all new, and I just went along. I just went along. I really never questioned. I didn't. I'm questioning now, but at that time, I just went along. Yeah, I was just taking whatever was there. I was just, as I say, I just went along.
Thank you again. Thank you again.
Yeah. I'm glad to be able to, as I say, share whatever memories or experience that I had. Nowadays, the more I speak, the more I remember things from my past, and sometimes regret the fact that I was not able to then talk and ask and share with my family and friends.
I'm going to move into the chat for our next question. I have a question from Valeria Hernandez, and she wants to know what you say to people who do not, or even worse, deny the events that occurred in the Holocaust, and how can we work to address that?
No, please repeat your question, please.
So she wants to know what you say to people today who don't know, or even worse, deny the events that happened in the Holocaust, and how we can work together to address that.
Well, you know, whether people want to believe it or not is their problem, but it happens. And there are many proofs that it happened. I know that what I went through, and I am one of the fortunate ones, because really, although I was separated from my family, and this separation really influenced all my life. All my life was influenced by the fact that I was separated those years and so on. What happened there, as I say, made an influence in the rest of my life, but it happened. And luckily, I didn't suffer other people who went in concentration camps had, and some had to even hide in much worse conditions that happened to me. So although it influenced all my life, because now that I look and think of what happened to me and how I reacted, I know that what happened then influenced all the rest of my life. But with all that, it wasn't, you know, as I say, I was fortunate. I was lucky. Others I know now, and now that I am here, I hear other survivors telling about their stories, and I see how much worse they were and how good I was. So I am here as well, learning a lot about listening to other survivors telling their memories.
Thank you. Our next question we're going to take from Noah Nazarian.
Hi, Louise. Thank you for coming and speaking to us. So my question, so basically, as
speak louder, please.
As the Holocaust was starting, it was more of a gradual progression to get to where it became a mass event. So what I was wondering is, in addition to educating people about the event and the history of it, what do you think are ways to resist and fight back if, God forbid, we start seeing something similar, either oppression in America, Europe, or in the world? What are actions we can take in the moment that maybe also could have been taken in other ways too?
I'm sorry. I really, I don't really understand what your question.
If we see similar events starting, not saying that they're going to, but I'm just trying to understand. In addition to educating people about the past, God forbid if we see things happening in the future that are similar to the events rising up to the Holocaust, what do you suggest that we can do in the moment to prevent it?
You know, the most important thing is a family. Relations with the family. Parents with their children, brothers and sisters, talking, being a family. This is what keeps you and leads you all your life. So whatever happened there and so on, really reinforcing the family links, the importance of family sharing and talking and living, you know, that is the core of everything, family life.
Thank you.
So reinforce that. That's my opinion, my advice.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take a question in the chat. I thought this was a very interesting question. This is from, hold on a second here. This is from Daniel Koss, and he wants to know what language you consider your primary language, and are you still fluent in the other languages you've learned along the way?
Well, my basic language is French. I am still French, and I like the French language, of course, although lately I have not been able to talk it too much, but still French is my basic language. And English has become also my very basic language too. I have been speaking English so many years, and especially here with my family, I also speak English. So English is so. Hebrew, it's also very close to my heart. I was 3 years in Israel, and I was speaking and studying in Hebrew, but I don't know it so well. I speak Spanish as well, because in Argentina, I was speaking Spanish. I went there to school, to secondary school, and 4 years of university. So Spanish is also very fluent for me.
Merci.
Now I'm going to take a question from Zach Holes.
Hi, Louise.
Hi.
Yeah, again, thank you for being here. I myself am the grandson of 2 Holocaust survivors, one from the Lodz death camps and one from Auschwitz.
Right.
And they both have, you know, the riveting stories of their own. They both lost their whole families to the war. I thought you might like to see this picture. This is my grandma right there with her family in the middle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. 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 I see it. Yes.
And I was just wondering, as I'm in the film school here at USC, so I was wondering your perspective. Have you seen films that depict the Holocaust, such as Schindler's List? See, that's because my Zadie and Bubby also were never able to watch those movies because they couldn't, they didn't want to. So I was just.
It's not only that I wouldn't want to, but I lived so many. I never had the opportunity to watch it, and you know, I never had that opportunity. But even now, I don't know if I would have the the spirit to be able to. Yeah, I saw. Hold on, I saw one movie. Gosh, I don't know. My memory is suddenly. I am. I saw one. It didn't. Okay, I can't remember one. But no, not really what happened in the concentration camps. You know, and so on. But no, I never saw, and I really don't want to see.
My grandparents thought
I don't think I could support it. Yeah.
My grandparents actually had the same opinion, so I was wondering if you had similar thoughts. So thank you so much for that.
I don't think I could take it. Yeah.
That's what they said.
Yeah. But I understand the feeling, you know, and as I say, I never knew my grandparents. Both my grandparents, uncle, and so on, stayed in Warsaw, and nobody survived. So I have never met my grandparents.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take 2 more questions. I have one from Tom Schiff, who was on our board of directors at USC Hillel. And he's wondering if you're still in touch with anyone from your Swiss family that took you in.
No, you know, I kept in touch as much as I could. As a matter of fact, from France, before leaving France for Argentina, I did make a visit to Switzerland to say goodbye to them and to see them. And while I was in France, of course, letters and so on, and even so, we were in touch. But of course, they are dead long time, so that's it. But I kept in touch as much as possible. Yeah.
And we have, we want to give everyone a chance. So we'll end with our 2 hands raised, Matthew Walensky and Kayla Normand. So we'll go with Matthew first.
Yeah, I had a question about your time in Switzerland as well. So you had mentioned that there were a lot of Jews that had immigrated and moved to Switzerland. But while you were in Locarno and Ticino, did you feel like there were a lot of Jews that were there at the time?
I didn't know. I was not in touch with any of them. Remember, I was with a Roman Catholic family. I was a young child, so I was not in touch with anybody else in Switzerland. Yeah. So much, yeah. As I say,
I was just curious to know if there was like at least somewhat of a presence that people knew that there were Jews around there, but.
No, yeah, I know, but no, I was, I was a Red Cross, under the Red Cross. I was a young child, and no, I was not in touch with anybody else, never knew.
Yeah. Thank you so much again.
Yeah.
Hi, Louise. I wanted to thank you, like everyone else has, for coming to speak to us. I really admire that you're able to so bravely speak about, like, tell us your whole story. And I was just curious to know how you got to this point and like what you kind of had to go through emotionally.
Speak loud.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi. I just want to say thank you for coming and tell you that I really admire that you're able to sit here and tell us your whole story as bravely as you have. And I was curious to know what that process was like for you to be able to sit here and tell us your story as comfortably as you have.
As I say, I am glad to be here. As I told you, I consider myself very lucky to have been able to live all these things and so on. And I'm still here, and I am with my daughter and her family, and I am so happy to be with them. But it's important, and now that I have made contacts, as I said, with the Jewish community, both through the Museum of Holocaust, the Museum of Tolerance, and now with the schools and so on. And believe me, a lot of it brings back into my mind all kind of things that maybe over these years I wasn't really thinking about. And now all these memories have become so vivid in my mind. But I am glad that to do something useful, that I consider telling you guys what happened, so that not only you know what happened, but you never let it happen again to anybody. That is important. But also, I think for Jews, history is important. Your past, where we come from, what happened to the people of the Jews during history, I think is very important also. To know what happened, starting from Babylon and going to Jerusalem, and starting from the Middle Age, and starting from Spain and the what do you call it, anyhow. all what happened, even in Europe and so on in the world, to the Jews. Why? Just because of being Jews. So I think it's important to know our history, our past. I think it's important for who we are, and maybe how we look at what we are doing, who we are, and so on. I think it's important to know. History is, the past is, I think it's very important. It's important of who we are.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Louise. And on that note, thank you all so much for taking the time to join the USC Hillel community, to listen to Louise's amazing testimony, and especially on the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. We hope you have a great rest of your night. And as always, fight on.